this first candle. The first candle of Advent season is the candle of hope. For the Jews, the hope of the coming King and Messiah that God had promised them. Please read with me from Jeremiah. The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will fulfill the gracious promise I made to the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. In those days and at that time, I will make a righteous branch sprout from David's line. He will do what is just and right in the land, and in those days Judah will be saved and Jerusalem will live in safety. This is the name by which he will be called, the Lord our righteousness. The candle of hope also symbolizes the Christian hope in the glorious return of Christ. Read with me the words of Jesus from the book of Luke. At that time they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And when these things begin to take place, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. This first day of Advent is about hope, but it's also about preparation. A servant doesn't want his master to come home to a dirty house. Likewise, we don't want Christ to return to unready hearts. And as John the Baptist cried out to the people to repent and to be ready for the coming of the Messiah, let us heed his words today. The prophet of old calls out to generations beyond number. A voice from ancient days still echoes from a desert land. Prepare. Prepare the way of the Lord. Build up the highway. Make straight the path. Throw wide the gates. Raise the valleys and lay low the mountains. Let fall the fortress of our hardened hearts. For a tiny babe shall be your king. A lamb will shepherd you. The Lord in helpless human form will be your rock and mighty fortress. Behold, even now he stands at the door. Prepare, open the way for him. Join me in this prayer. Hope of Abraham, promise of David, master of our hearts, find us ready. Come, Lord Jesus. So we light the candle of hope, and we hope that it works and it doesn't go out. There we go. Try it. Come on, you can do it. I'm impressed. Today is also a special opportunity. There are several organizations in our community that do things to reach out to people and to make a difference for the kingdom of God. And we have, SOS and the food pantry here and several different organizations. But one organization specifically that we have recently made a commitment to help partner and sponsor this organization. We have had people from our church that have volunteered and helped support and giving their time and energy to this group. And their mission is pretty critical as it relates to the specific group that they're working with. I don't know if you remember what it was like to be a teenager. I don't know if you remember the struggles and the trials that there are, but those things are all still going on and exponentially have been piled upon them. Many other dangers and stresses and struggles. All with just trying to figure out how your body's supposed to work and stuff. It's a critical time because statistics, and you've seen or read them, where it talks about the percentage of people who make a decision for Christ often do so in those years of their teenage development. That once a person reaches 19, 20, 30s or whatever, the rate in which that their probability of finding Christ and living for him drastically drops off the cliff. It is imperative that we are on the front lines with teenagers, telling them who Jesus Christ is. And even if you think they're not listening, even if you think that they are distracted or busy or on their phones or whatever, we need to proclaim loudly and as often as possible that Jesus Christ is the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings, and he made you, he designed you, he has a plan for you, he loves you, and he wants you to live for him as a purpose for you. Without that message, they're not getting that from their television, they're not getting it off of Instagram, they're not getting it off of all the other voices in their lives. There is only one place that they can receive that, and that's through church and through organizations and through other believers and adults in their lives who will come alongside them and share this message of Jesus Christ. So it's my honor to host here today for us and introduce to you Jada Simpson. She's here. Hello. She's going to come on up. She works with Youth for Christ in our community. And I have asked her to come and share it. And if you can't tell, it's pretty important to me. I know it's important to you, but I have teenager people, little monsters, treat. But I worked in youth ministry for about 15 years. 18? Like I said, like 10 years. Working with youth at ages like dog years, it ages you a little bit farther beyond what you're in. But I'll just say it's a critical age group, and we're thankful for the work that they do actually in the schools. And she's going to explain a little bit kind of what they do and her story of how she got involved. And I'm going to try to shut up and get out of the way. All right? So would you welcome her?
It's great to be with you today. And just to start, I'm going to have a video that explains a bit of what we're doing with Youth for Christ and our mission in the world. It's not only in here in Little Marysville and Port Huron, it goes beyond it, so we're around the world. So let's go ahead and watch that video.
Students, they are our future, but less and less of them are followers of Christ. This generation of youth are the least churched we have ever seen, and almost 30% of them identify as atheists. In the United States, there are over 69,000 middle school and high schools. In those schools are over 24 million students between the ages of 11 and 17. Of those students, at least 15 million do not regularly attend church. Campus Life, a ministry of Youth for Christ, has reached out to these kids for over 45 years. There is Campus Life ministry spanning the country from San Diego, California to Long Island, New York, and everywhere in between. With over 1,000 ministry sites, we engage over 100,000 students each week, and that number is growing daily. The question remains, with so many lost students, how can we possibly reach them all? How does Youth for Christ reach this skeptical generation that is unaware of the need for a Savior? We don't wait for students to come to us. We intentionally go into their world in order to initiate new relationships, whether it be on campus, hanging out at the skate park, or rooting for their team on a Friday night. We go where students are. As these relationships form, students enter into the community of campus life. One natural way that happens is through Club. Club is a weekly, high-energy gathering where community is built and God's story is told. We also create opportunities for students to engage in deeper relationships with campus life leaders through shared experiences. We spend time with students to earn the right to be heard, model Christ-like behavior, and be a listening ear. As relationships grow, we connect with students and give them individual attention to ask questions, share doubts, and navigate life. We also provide opportunities for students together in small groups where we discuss relevant issues that they face and their spiritual needs. As we do this, we help them connect their story to God's story. Trips are an opportunity to bring students out of their environment through unforgettable activities, Christ-sharing relationships, and a clear presentation of the gospel. We see God change lives forever. Throughout this journey, we work together with the local church to help raise up lifelong followers of Jesus. But that is just the beginning. We engage Christian students who are committed to personal growth and influencing the people around them for Christ. These students then join us in the mission of sharing God's story with their friends and raising up lifelong followers of Jesus. Many of them even return to Youth for Christ as volunteer or staff leaders. So, with so many lost students, how do we reach them all? By empowering a relational army of student and adult leaders to engage students in authentic, Christ-sharing relationships, one student at a time.
All right, that video excites me because that is a big part of why I came into Youth for Christ. I started as a volunteer when my son Wes, who's here in the audience, and my family's here. So happy we all got to come today, all but one. But we live in Marysville, and he was going into Marysville Middle School in 6th grade, and I was working at Power 88.3 and Hope FM at the time. And I met a guy named Dirk Hayes. Dirk was the executive director at the time. And he said, hey, he would talk about Youth for Christ. I'd have him in to talk about on the radio what Youth for Christ was and what they were doing. And God just kept pulling out my heart, like this is something, because I had worked with youth at my church and been a volunteer, but he just kept tugging at my heart with what they're doing and going to the school. And he's like, you know what, we don't have Youth for Christ at Marysville Middle School right now. And he said, and Wes was in 5th grade, and I said, well, not this year. I had an excuse, you know, I don't have anyone in the middle school. Well, then he gets into middle school, and what does Dirk say? Are you ready? And so I started volunteering that year, and I was a volunteer for, just over a year or so, like into maybe a year and a half or so. And the director at the time, Kevin Collins, said to me, well, I approached him, and he said, you know what, I was thinking about approaching you about it, but he had mentioned in a meeting that they were looking for staff, they were wanting to build a team and more staff workers, and I had my degree in broadcasting. That's what I felt like God called me to, but God kept tugging at my heart as I was volunteering at Marysville about what the Lord is doing, and it so grabs me, and it is in my DNA from when I was in college too, of working with youth and going to them.
There you go.
And so that is the big thing of what we're doing is we are going to youth. We're saying to them, you know what, come to this campus life or come to this core group, because we have both ministries in our area. They're all a part of Youth for Christ East Michigan. But so I had this conversation with Kevin, and at the time I said, I don't know, it's just this fundraising thing and this, I was in a nonprofit at the time, but I'm like, so you have to raise your own money, and I don't know about this. So a year goes by, and unfortunately it was devastating. We lost Kevin in an accident. And at that time I said, Lord, if you want me, I will go. And so 6 months later, God brought one of the staff people to me and they said, hey, I heard that you had a conversation with Kevin, so it got back to the director who took over. So then God said, okay, it's time. And I prayed about it. I took a whole month and just prayed and really was seeking God about it. And it was clear to me, okay, I want you to go there. So I've been on staff for, it's in my 4th school year, so it'll be 4 years this summer. And it has just been an incredible ride. I mean, just learning more about God's plan and just seeing Him work. I mean, it is definitely, like, it's scary at times because I'm like, okay, I'm in my 40s now, and these kids are, how can I relate? And it's like, I just see God, and I mean, it's not easy, and I feel like, I'm not doing a good job at times. But like the video said, we have an army of people. We have somewhere almost 75 volunteers in YFC East Michigan who are in St. Clair and Macomb counties. We're covering 16 schools in both counties right now, and that's middle school and high school. And we have a staff of, there's 4 of us that are regular, but then we have a guy who does things like our website and stuff like that. So our staff, along with amazing volunteers, we could not do this without them. And we're able to reach on a weekly basis. It's close to 1,000 students with every group. And so we are so honored to be doing what we're doing. In this fall so far, we've seen 60 kids give, almost 60, it's 50, like 56 is the count that I know right now. 56 kids who have given their lives to Christ. We are so excited about this. Yeah, that's what it's all about. It's going to them, and we're telling them that a lot of these kids, their families don't go to church, and what's really amazing is when we're talking to them about the Lord and they're learning, and then they're going back and telling their families, and we're hearing about how they're making an impact on their families. And one story of a young lady who I'm currently just still mentoring and meeting with is a girl named Livy. And she went to camp. She grew up has gone to camp 2 summers now, but she did not grow up in a Christian family, still isn't. She's in foster care now, but she started, her family, it's been a really rough upbringing. Her parents have both had drug abuse. Her dad's in prison right now, and her mom got out, but her mom has not been able to keep that relationship and be the mom that she wants to be. And so she's with her aunt, and her aunt, her aunt's a Christian. And so the Lord has brought her in my life through, it was first with where she went to our church, and then through her aunt. Her aunt attends the church I go to, and so it's like I was able to meet her. Well, Libby, without being a Christian yet, invited one friend to camp who was also not a Christian, her friend Nellie, and Nellie heard the truth, and Nellie is like opening up to God, and not there yet, but she's opened up to God. She's still come to Youth for Christ stuff. That was the first summer, and then this past summer, Libby brought her friend Lily, and Lily's not a Christian, but Lily's opening up to God. They were both, all of them were impacted in a huge way at Youth for Christ camp. And so now I'm inviting them to things, and they're coming, but they're not yet. They're saying, I'm not there yet. And we're like, hey, we love you, because that's what it's about. It's about the relationships that we're building with students and that our volunteers are. And it's people like Joe and Rob, and we have other Carmelas come along with snacks and her support, and all of you, your prayer support, but it's the churches behind what we're doing, and that's our whole goal is full circle back to church. We want them to be, they start with the relationship where they know us and they learn to trust us, and then they're able, once we earn their trust, we're able to tell them of this Jesus that we know. So we bring it in, we make it fun, we make it, relatable in their world, and then we're able to earn that right to tell them about the truth. So we've got, for me, my story, I relate very much with what's happening to this. I think God just, as I said, it's kind of in my DNA, because I grew up with a divorced family. My parents divorced when I was 4. My mom became an alcoholic after wanting to keep all of us. I have 3 siblings, and she was struggling and started drinking, working at a bar at night, and my dad got us back, but he struggled with anger issues. And so I grew up with my dad and my brothers from 2nd to almost 11th grade in a home that was not a happy home, and it was tough. And but I remember God just put people, and I look back and I'm like, there were those neighbors, the Kogendorfers, like they were praying for me, and now, I talk to them and they're like, we were praying, and it was their example, and it was the Spots family, who actually, Franklin Spots is one of the people who was, a long time ago, was a director of YFC. Who would have known? The Lord did. So they were in my life. They were right down the road on 7th Street. And then I had, through the church that, I was going to church with my dad, and it was like I knew that our church community loved us, but it was tough, it's stuff in our family, we're all a mess, and it's like there were people there that God put to love me, and the Lord worked in our family's life. The Lord, brought my dad and my mom through a lot, and it's just seeing Him work in my own life, and then wanting that for these youth, that they can know Jesus, and they can know peace, and truly know who they are, know they have a purpose. And so for me, that is where, when I think back on, a lot of times I get crying and sharing about, but I've held it together here today, but the work that God has done in my life, of how I can be who I am, and I am just a sinner, I am just in need of a Savior, just like, I want them to be able to know and have, the power of God in their life. And so that is where we're all these, people that love Jesus, and we're going in weekly meeting these kids, and we have right now at Fort Gratiot Middle School, we are busting at the seams. We have every week, I'm not kidding you, there are 76 graders coming to the group. We do campus life at lunchtime, but we just had 50 kids give their lives to Christ throughout the lunch period, where they asked kids if they wanted to start a relationship with Him. And so that's one school, and then Central Middle School is, we can meet at lunch, and we have, and I'm able to be there every Friday, and that one is like, we have between 25 to 30 kids at lunch. And so these kids are hungry, they want to know the truth, and we're just so privileged to be there. And I just want to thank you guys for helping us be there, helping us to do what we're doing. And it does take an army, and and I just want to thank you guys too, because every time I come here, I feel like I'm like in the family. You guys are such a loving church. Seriously, I just love coming here and spending time with you guys. So a little bit about ways you can get involved. So there's volunteering, which is, like I said, we have a few from your church here that do that, but it's a weekly commitment. Maybe one week you have something going on, that's okay. hope we don't get upset. You know, you don't have, it's not, you can have a week off. And it's weekly during the school year. We have camps. If you ever want to, you love going to camp, you want to be a counselor, we could use help there. And so we're in 16 schools, so I'm sure we're in near your neighborhood in St. Clair County. And then another way is coming into our office and volunteering time. Maybe you're more of an administrative type person. We do mailings quarterly. We also put together different pamphlets, and there's a lot about like getting literature, you know, like handing people stuff, so we have office stuff that you could help with. And that's any time when our office is open, we would welcome any help. Another way is financially, you know, becoming a monthly sponsor, and you know, any way that a one-time or monthly gift, that's a way. And then our prayer support, and that is the big part. That is what keeps us. I mean, we're nothing without the power of God behind us, and we're just. We weekly, like we're praying throughout the week as a team and with our volunteers, and so that is a huge thing. If you can just keep us in your prayers, praying for these youth that are just they're in such darkness and they need to know the light. And so we're thankful for you guys. I'm going to be back at the table here at the staying until the end. So come back and talk to me if you have any questions. I'd love to see you. Talk to you guys, meet you. We have Youth for Christ shirts for sale. They're half off. They were 10 and now they're 5. So, but yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You guys didn't think you'd get out of a sermon, did you? Well, I know. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that to you. Thank you for sharing and just the work that Youth in Christ does. I encourage you guys to take advantage of this opportunity to just kind of talk with her and you know, just meet her out at the table here and kind of look for ways that you can be supporting. And I'll tell you, when you're running an organization like that, it is fueled completely by the support of other believers. If you don't have people that believe in what you're doing and the mission that you're doing and the places that you're going, then you don't have what it takes to get there and see it happen. So whether that's through prayer or through financial giving and whatever you can do, please find a way. I want to tie this in a little bit because as she was talking, it made me think about the passage that I had put us in for this week. If you don't know, we'll take a book of the Bible and we teach through it. So I want to just kind of highlight a section. I'm not going to get through this whole chapter, but I want to just highlight a couple verses that kind of connect with what she was sharing and kind of tied into what God wants for us to be part of. Romans chapter 13 is where we're at. We've been teaching through Romans. And we're gonna circle back around and come back to Romans 13, but I want to take a piece out of the middle of this, which is not usually what I do. But we'll circle back around and catch the rest next week. But I want us to start Romans chapter 13 and verse 8. It says, Let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For he who loves his fellow man has fulfilled the law. The commandments: do not commit adultery, do not murder, do not steal, do not covet, and whatever other commandment there may be, are summed up in this one rule: love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no harm to its neighbor, therefore love is the fulfillment of the law. So in this concept, really briefly, he implements this idea that everything that the law was based on is really founded upon this idea of loving others. And it's a concept that is familiar to us. How many of you guys have ever heard we should love one another? Ever heard the concept? Have you ever tried to love something that you don't really love? Have you ever been served a meal? I got to tell you this story. I was early on in my married life. I appreciate your prayers as we go into this dark time of storytelling. No, but early on, we would go and spend the holidays at my in-laws' house a lot, and there was this devious creation of food concoction that my father-in-law would make called mincemeat pie. It sounds exactly like you might imagine from the word. And I had not gotten my wings, so to speak, of brave truth-telling. And so he had offered me a piece of pie, and I thought in my mind, that sounds lovely. Yes, I would like a piece of pie. There's a couple things I didn't know. A, what kind of pie it was, and B, what he meant by piece. He proceeded to cut the thing in half and to flop on my plate this giant slab of mincemeat pie. None of which I was really volunteering for. If you've ever tasted something, does anybody like it? It's like cat food in a hot pocket. So that's actually on the label when they sell it. No, so I'm eating this and I'm like, this is lovely. And you're trying, man, and you ever try to chew something and then it just does not disintegrate. If you love something, like it just disappears in your mouth. Like, tell you what, give me a Krispy Kreme, that thing's gone, and I don't know what happened to it. Poof, what? Well, man, mincemeat pie, I'm just like, I'm chewing. It's a chore, it's a labor. And every time, he's looking at me like, no, he's like, hey, yeah. I'm like, this is a test. I'm the son-in-law. This is a test. I must show myself to be brave and idiot. So I'm eating this. So for the next 5 years, this becomes our moment. Hey, you want a piece of pie? Yes. And there is nothing that you can do to manufacture any genuine sense of love. And here's the challenge, guys. God commands us to love things that are not naturally easy for us to love. Things like people. And it's not, listen, you might be good at loving people who love you back. There are some people who are just easy to love, right? Like me. Like, I know how you guys, I get it. I get how easy that is. I make it easy. But God calls us to extend beyond that. Not just the people who are nice to us, the people who are easy to love, but to love people, some people that we haven't met, some people that we don't know, some people that are strangers, some people that don't love us back, some people that actually hate us. He calls us to love them. And as we talked about last week, love is not just a due diligence, but it's also a feeling, an emotion. He calls us to feel something for people that we cannot force ourselves to feel even if we wanted to. Catch that? And yet God still commands you to have a response to others that cannot be generated just by willpower. And that's how much we need God to change our hearts and our minds. So when he says, love your neighbors, it doesn't matter what kind of a good person you are, all the religious activities you do, all the things. If you do not have genuine love in your heart, it is in vain. You can force yourself to do right things, but if you do not do the right things for the right reasons, it is not righteousness. And it will not last. You'll get tired. You'll get sick of it. You won't be able to sustain the effort anyway. Even the very best of us who can generate a lot of activity and do a lot of things, you will wear yourself out if you're doing things to try to impress God with how capable you are. Because you're not. I'll tell you, I'm terrible at loving people. I try. Man, sometimes I'm just like, get away from me. What is wrong with you? You'd think as a pastor you'd be a people, but I'm not really that great of a people person. Like, people that kind of annoy me. Not you guys, let me call other people. I'm not trying to get fired here. I'm just saying. I don't know how to love the way God loves me. The kind of unconditional love that he has, that when I blow it, he says that he forgives me. And he cleanses me from that unrighteousness, and he gives me a new start. I don't know how to do that with people because I remember, right, what they've done, and it hinders my ability to really embrace them fully and to trust them. And I want to build walls and make boundaries and do all that stuff. And I think some of that's healthy. I don't want to totally get rid of that concept. But it's hard to love people, and God's called us to do it. And I think it's more than just saying, well, I can't stand them, but I love them in Jesus' name. I think it has something to do with putting ourselves in other people's shoes and being able to have a genuine compassion and feeling for them. And I'll tell you, working with youth, at some point in my youth ministry career, I realized that it was a challenge to relate to some of the things that youth were going through. And Jada, you talked about it, right? You think, man, I'm 40, and here I am like 29 right now, and it's still really tough. You forget what it's like in the world of youth, the things that are important to you. And the older you get, it's harder to put yourself back there. But it's a great exercise to realize, you know what? You have to meet people where they are. You have to connect with people with what's important to them and care about what matters to them more than just yourself. The Bible calls us to that, to consider the needs of others above our own. And you can say, well, this generation just is, they're lost and they're crazy. I don't understand their gadgets. Get off my yard! Or you can say, God, place in me a heart and a burden to love people that I don't understand, but I know you love them deeply too. And so when we talk about joining and partnering groups like Youth for Christ or organizations like that, we're asking God to place in us a burden and a heart for people who are lost, that maybe we don't get, or maybe we don't understand, or maybe we don't know a lot about. But God, change our hearts so that we can love the way you love the world. I want you to bow your heads and close your eyes for a minute. Heavenly Father, I pray that you would do the work of transforming our hearts and our lives so that we can love the way you've called us to. God, may Jesus Christ be born in us so that we can share the message of the good news. God, I pray that you would empower, and I pray a blessing over Jana and the Youth for Christ organization and the work that they're doing. God, I pray that you would make roads for them into have influence in schools and organizations and places where they can bring Jesus Christ into the lives of these young people. And God, may that effort be blessed and the ripple effects from that, God, just go out from generations to generations. God, if we do not pass along the passion and the relationship with Jesus Christ to this next generation, God, the world is in a desperate place. So God, I pray that you would empower and make pathways and inroads and influence for this organization. And God, for all of us, may we have a burden for the lost. Have a burden for our neighbors and our friends and our families that don't know Jesus, God. May we love so violently and forcefully and boldly that it would be an influence to bring others to you, God. I pray that you would just allow us to fiercely love the way you have fiercely loved us. And just thank you for this moment that we have to spend with you. I pray that you'd help us to focus on you this week as all the business and the schedule of the holidays kind of press in around us, God. May we have the spirit of peace and joy and hope just alive in our hearts. In your name we pray. Amen. Would you stand with me together, and we're going to sing this song, and you guys will be dismissed.